Thank you.
So this is Art Viewing Adventures, and we've got a great show today. We're talking about a really wonderful, popular artist, Ruth Asawa. We've talked about her before, but we've got some new material to share with you about Ruth Asawa. I'm joined by my good friend and fellow guide, Jeanette Pettibone. How are you today, Jeanette?
Good. Yeah. How are you doing, Rodney?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm up at Lake Tahoe, and I have been going door to door in Nevada, talking to people about political candidates. The one I'm pushing for is the one who's not been indicted or convicted of any felonies. So I'm excited about that. But that's a totally different topic. Let's talk about Ruth Asawa, Jeanette.
And we should probably just note, because I know that the programming said we were going to talk about the Banff exhibit, that we should just note we're still planning on doing that. It's just logistics reasons. We're going to push that off till a later date and talk about Ruth Asawa today.
Yeah, we're thinking we'll be doing that in December, so stay
Yeah.
tuned for that. But yeah, Ruth Asawa. So I think most of you, maybe everybody knows her for these amazing wire sculptures. And Jeanette, like, what are some of your favorite, like, of her sculptures? Where do you like to go experience Ruth Asawa?
Oh, I probably my heart's a little bit at the Diang in the elevators going up to the tower. It's not just because I mean, no matter where, her sculptures are beautiful. And just I love seeing them. But there's something about that particular location in the Diang where the walls are concrete and the lighting makes these beautiful shadows on that concrete wall behind it. And so I was telling Rodney, I was talking to you before, how I think that the shadows themselves can be as great art as the actual sculptures, the way that the light shines through them and creates two-dimensional patterns on the wall from these three-dimensional objects is just stunning. What about
I really
you?
love that. I love that too, Jeanette. But there's one other thing about the Young location that I particularly like, which is that it's free. You
Yeah.
don't have to buy a museum ticket to go and see. I think it's the best collection of Ruth Asawa sculptures in the Bay Area. So if you happen to be in Golden Gate Park near the Young Museum, you should check it out. Here's another one that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not sure where this one's located, to be perfectly honest, but
Yeah.
this is another one of just like these wonderful wire sculptures. And probably, I'm thinking most of you out there in the audience are very familiar with the Ruth Asawa wire sculptures, but we are going to get a little bit beyond that. Here's something it's a little different. This, I believe, is at the De Young. Jeanette, does that sound right to you?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember.
If it's
But
not, there's one just like it in that elevator area.
yeah. But
But
what I love is it's still working with the wire medium, but it's a little bit it's just it's taking inspiration. It's also taking inspiration from nature, in this case, plant life, and it's just they're just beautiful.
yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to be getting into today, because as much as we love the wire sculptures, and we're going to be looking at some other stuff. But let's, Jeanette, do you want to read this quote?
Yeah. So these forms come from observing plants, the spiral shell of a snail, seeing light through insect wings, watching spiders repair their webs in the early morning, and seeing the sun through the droplets of water suspended from the tips of pine needles while watering my garden. I think
So
that's just beautiful.
yeah, it shows that she's really, like, she has her art, but she's also really being influenced by what she sees in nature. And what we're going to talk about today really kind of gets at that, because we're going to be going beyond these wire sculptures, and which have been celebrated. Here's like a bunch of postage stamps that came out a few years ago. But we're going to be talking about her drawings and paintings.
Yeah. So a lot of these, not all, a lot of these came before her sculptures. For instance, like this work where she was doing this at Black Mountain College, where she did, I think she was there 6 years. They don't offer degrees there, so she just stayed as a student. And a lot of these, I think though, show where she was going to go with her sculptures. But so this is called, it's untitled, but referred to as Dancers. And I want you all to take a minute to look at there and see where the dancers are. What you
Yeah.
think, why do you think it was titled Dancers? And you can write in the chat if you'd like.
Or unmute if you want
Or
to unmute,
unmute.
that's fine. But yeah, why is it called Dancers? What's going on here? And the other thing that's really cool is I love the color choices and but yeah, where are we? Where did she get this idea of dancers? Gail says it kind of looks like jellyfish. It does. It could be like sea creatures,
Yeah.
or could it be actually underwater dancers?
Yep. And also Sarah and Sue say it looks like little groups, and there are groups kind of defined by color choices, I think, and
Yeah,
size.
there's groups, but if we look, say, at this one up here, this little circle, do we start to see, first I thought these were a bunch of rings or something, or they could be like space aliens, but are we looking at dancers? Is that why she's calling it that? And then from what is our vantage point? And I think I want to go back to what Gail said. I think it could be like underwater dancers,
Yeah. So
maybe a form of jellyfish, right?
yeah. Well, I think that the blue is so striking in this. It's such a beautiful, beautiful color blue, and it definitely evokes water. Yeah, it could seem like dancers from above. Also, think about, I don't know if any of you see, but think about, this. I'm not a dancer, so my arms do not, but like a head with arms above and maybe a large skirt below. Do
Yeah,
those?
dancers from some interesting perspective, or just kind of an abstraction of dancers. We should actually say, Jeanette, that these drawings were on display about a year ago at the Whitney Museum.
Yeah,
And there is a catalog of that show that you borrowed from the San Francisco Public Library,
I did, called Throughline.
Through Lines. And I think if anyone wants to check that out, you can wait for Jeanette to return it to the San Francisco Public Library. You can put it on hold. Or I haven't checked to see if any of the other Bay Area library systems have that catalog. But Jeanette, you were telling
Highly
me.
recommend. It's beautiful. And yeah, it's beautifully put together, and it has some interesting essays. But even just if you're flipping through just to see the artwork, it's really nice, because a lot of, like we started at the beginning, a lot of people see and recognize and celebrate her sculptures, but it's really nice to see a whole exhibition that celebrated all of the other work. I've heard that in the book that was written about her not too long ago, Everything She Touched, or Everything She Touches,
Everything she touched. Yeah.
it talked a lot about how she always wanted to have a show of just her drawings, but because she was so popular with her sculpture, places were saying, no, 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 maybe we'll do some drawings with your sculpture, but we just want to see your sculptures. And so she really didn't have a great chance to do just that drawing show like she wanted, especially earlier in her career, just while her sculptures were taking off. Yeah. So it's beautiful to have this book dedicated to that part of her art that she really wanted to share with people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that someday these drawings will come to San Francisco and we could see them in person. Let's move on to another one. So here is, it's got some of the same curves that we were looking at with the dancers. This is from about the same period. And let me just ask the audience, like, what strikes you about this? What do you like or dislike about this image? You can take a little time to look at it. I have to say, knowing her whole career with the hanging wire sculptures, this is really making us think about that.
Yeah, it's what Sarah just typed in. It looks like her baskets. It does. It looks like, but this came before her baskets. This was what she was drawing before she started making her wire structures. So she already had these forms and thoughts in her mind, in her art before that. So I think that this is fascinating. Yeah, so we've got some of the same, enjoying the color combo. I like that as well because it was really important to her, the color combo. Some of you may know the artist Joseph Albers, who really worked with color. If you don't, all you need to know is that her teachers at Black Mountain College were incredibly important to her development and her thoughts around how to put colors together. And so here we have the orange and the blue, which are on opposite sides of the color wheel. And so what that does is just really make the colors pop, or as I've often heard her talk about them as vibrating, that it gives more, it doesn't just enhance the colors, but it almost gives the colors themselves some life. And I like that there's that life along with all of the shapes, which I think also bring a sense to me of movement through the it's a two-dimensional piece of work, but it feels like there's movement in this work, at least to me. I don't know. Does anyone else feel the same?
While we're letting people ponder that question, do you see movement in this? Peter and Kevin are asking, is this a block print? I think it is, isn't it?
I'm sorry I didn't write that down. I'm not sure.
Oh, and Ronald says the shapes remind me of Miro.
Ah, yeah. Oh, that's a great, if you know the artist Juan Miro, a Spanish artist, he does also have a lot of shape work like this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice
and it's a
observation.
kind of surrealist kind of is this is it's not something from reality, but maybe it's something from like a dreamlike
Yeah.
reality. Also, I'm sure many people of you are looking at this thinking, well, those are the colors of the New York Mets. Were badly beaten by the Dodgers last night, but this was done many years before the Mets first started playing, so we don't think there's a connection there. Dragonus says this looks like a collage, blue paper over. Yeah, it could be. That's okay. That's the unfortunate thing about looking at this on the computer is I don't know. Let's see if
Yeah,
anyone
can
wants
we
to
look
do
it
like
up
a
real
little
quick?
Google search.
Yeah, I'll leave that Google search for you. And just while you're looking, yeah, it does. I do see that collage look as well. Um, that so we've talked a little bit about color, and then also with the dancers, sort of this idea of what is more dominant? Is it the figure or is it the background? And maybe in the dancers, it was hard to tell. Um, you know, what's the figure, what's the background? There's a sort of a blending here of dancers. Here, maybe it's a little clearer because, or I don't know, is it? That we have these orange shapes on a blue background, but she's going to be playing with these ideas a lot with color, and with the idea of figure and background. And I think that it's really, really cool.
Well, I think one of the things, Jeanette, you and I really loved about these drawings is that it's a new dimension to an artist. We thought we knew a lot about Ruth Asawa, but it kind of adds to our appreciation of her.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to another one. This one's intriguing, really. Like you look at the title, and I do think this one's also kind of surreal, but it's quite different, right? With these squares.
Yeah. We've got a lot of the same colors that we just saw, but it's definitely different in that not just that we've got these objects that are rectangles and squares instead of the circles and ovals and shapes, but also kind of playing with some perspective here. Yeah, are they folding boxes, unfolding boxes? When you look at in the center, the orange square, then there's the black, then there's the blue square as you move from left to right. Is the orange square in front? Is the blue square in front? How are these boxes folding and unfolding? Which is the top square, which is the bottom square? Are they bending up or are they bending down? There's a little bit here that our eye is playing with. That's really interesting, I think.
Yeah, Ronald says maybe inspired by origami. That's a great thought. I think because we know that Ruth Asawa did like the idea of origami and use that in other works of hers.
Yeah.
I see that Catherine says the bent rectangles add perspective. Yeah, it's like
Yep.
unfolding
Absolutely.
boxes, says Peter and Kevin. Nikki says she loves the colors again. Yeah, nice color choice. And then great from Dragona, influence of Albers color theory. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
Albers being Jeanette.
Joseph Albers, yeah, one of her teachers at Black Mountain College, and known for color theory and the way I think at least what I'm familiar of his work is mostly squares. And then when you put squares of different colors, or even whether they're squares or not, but when you put colors to get next to each other, right adjacent to each other, it can change the way we perceive a color, which I think is so interesting. I think we didn't put a slide with some of these ideas in it, but the perception of color is really important as well. Again, here we have these orange against blue. So maybe you can look a little bit here. Let's look at the shape right against the black middle panel of the unfolding box. Maybe you can look a little bit at how the orange might look a little different against the blue, versus maybe what it looks like against the black. It's not, maybe there's also a little bit of ink seepage in this case, but kind of looking at how our perception changes is really fascinating.
And then what about this title, Jeanette? I mean, birds.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the title? Does
Are
anyone
we
have
seeing
thoughts
birds?
about that
Would you see birds if she didn't put birds in the title? But I think these shapes to me, they are kind of maybe flying, right? They do have they're in motion, they're not grounded. Are they birds though? Are they abstractions of birds?
Yeah.
It's just kind of an interesting
It
thing. This
could be,
is stuff.
yeah, yeah. We've got some shapes. I love when an artist gives you a title. And I mean, how I also wonder because the title is Untitled Birds, like when did it become birds? Was it always birds? And Untitled Birds? But yeah, I love when there's a title that makes you want to look at the visual for a longer period of time in order to find those connections. And whether you find the connections or not, I think that is a minor point. I think the fact of looking longer is always a great idea with art.
Could it be that, like, untitled with then this thing in the parentheses means, well, I'm not going to give this a title, but if I was to give it a title, this is what I would call it.
Yeah.
Trying to have it both ways. Peter and Kevin say, I guess the thin white lines are the bird legs. I initially saw some chairs. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I think I wouldn't think of birds if it wasn't in the title. And I do get a sense of like those could be parts of a chair.
Or I even initially thought almost like when you see an airplane, like the remnants of an airplane as it goes really quickly, that how the air changes behind it. I almost thought like, oh, how the air is. I get again, I guess I'm finding some movement and motion in a lot of these that is exciting for me because whether or not they're moving, if that's the sense of motion, maybe the pinwheel shape of some of these unfolding box-like structures gives me a feeling that there's movement in this, even though it's, again, static two-dimensional piece. I do get this sense of feeling like both the objects are moving, and if I were to enter, if I could enter this, that I would be moving too. I'd be, whether I'm going up a step or down a step or sliding down or swirling, that I would be caught in motion if I was to enter this work.
Then you wouldn't need to take Bart to go for it. Good question from Gail. Do we know why works are titled untitled and then a title is given in parentheses? Gail, I'll be honest, I don't know. It's my practice to often avoid trying to see what the artists say, because I feel like it's their job to communicate with us visually. And if they want to do confusing things like tell us it's untitled, but then give us a title, I don't know. I personally, I go with it, but maybe others have different thoughts on that.
And it's also unclear who gave it the subtitle, when you think of all the works in art museums, it wasn't until more recent art history that artists gave their work titles. A lot of the titles are coming from, the canon, who, curators. You can see with, older European art, the titles might change. Things are ever evolving because a lot of the artists weren't titling their work the same way that they are now. And so in this case, was it, she probably started with Untitled. It was probably a work that she did while she was at Black Mountain College. She was really working and experimenting and trying and becoming the artist that we know today. Did she go back later and call it Birds? Did someone else call it Birds? It's unclear to know with titles ever, I think. And it's a great question.
But actually, I know the right person to ask, which is Marilyn Chase, the author of Everything She Touched, whose email address I do have, and I bug occasionally, and we've even threatened to get together and look at Ruth Asawa sculptures. I think I need to ask Marilyn Chase this. So, Art Viewing Adventures people, I'm gonna find out. We're gonna find out if Marilyn Chase knows anything about this. Fair enough.
Yes.
We don't always answer the questions on Art Viewing Adventures, but we kind of we love questions even better than we love answers, I think. Let's move on. So here's like a different one, really. So you know, this isn't like anything we've seen up to this point. What do you guys think of this image? What strikes you about it?
I'm just taking a pause because I'm letting other people think before I chime in. I'd love to, yeah, I'd love to hear.
Peter and Kevin say it's pretty, and
Yeah,
it's really I would love to have this drawing. This is it's a
yeah,
really beautiful image, again from 1948, 49. So she's still like in these early years as an artist, and does this. We think, Jeanette, again, I'm sorry we don't have the exact materials, but we think this is watercolor.
yeah. This one is watercolor. Yeah,
Oh, it is. Okay. And it kind of looks like it would be because of that layering effect. Peter thinks it looks like a lay.
yeah,
Yeah, it could be. In beautiful colors, wonderful color choices.
yeah. Again, using a lot of these blues, in this case with yellows and orangey reds, and but I love the like layering of intensity, which works so well with watercolor. So, looking at the right hand sides, just the blue leaves, even we've just got mostly one color there on that side, but the varying intensity, the darker blue to the lighter blue to the almost translucent, and just like working with that, I think is lovely. Of course, this is just partly the watercolor medium, but uh, it's just, I think, so gorgeous.
Some cool comments. Catherine says it looks like rubber tree leaves. Gail says very unlike her sculptures. Yeah, I agree with you, Gail.
Yeah.
Like she's truly expressing herself through another medium. Peter and Kevin, she is experimenting with shapes and colors.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. That this is a period of development for her, that she's kind of figuring out where she wants to go as an artist. So we're kind of seeing her emerge, and like what kind of shapes really grab her, this connection she has to nature. And then the wire sculptures don't really have color, but
Yeah.
we can see what her color choices are. Jeanette, you want to talk about negative space? Is this a good time to be kind of bringing that into the discussion?
Well, one thing, we can start looking at it here, but I think we'll see it better later on. But you can see some of the leaves seem to be defined almost by the lack of color. There are some white leaves here, but they're very clearly leaves. They're leaf shaped, but they're not defined by putting white on the on here, but by having all the colors surrounding it in the background, creating those white leaves. And I think we're going to see her again, when we saw in the dancers and some of these, this idea of what is more dominant, the figure or the background, and how is she going to be playing with this? And that goes also with like positive and negative space. How is she playing with this? How is she balancing it? And when does she flip and go all the way over to one side or the other?
Yeah. So again, more like experimentation. We see Peter and Kevin. You totally nail it. She's experimenting, and so that this is like a great study for her.
Yeah. And to Catherine's point, I have no idea what kind of leaves these are. But I love that you found a a leaf you think it resembles.
Yeah, I think if you think it's a rubber tree leaf, it's a rubber tree leaf.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this one. So potato print. This is from a few years later, 1951, 1952. And
Yeah.
I guess why it's called a potato print?
I think have had how many of you all, and maybe if you can figure out how to use the reaction, how many of you all um, have done a potato print in your life?
Oh, I guess I'm not allowed to do do we have
Oh.
I don't know if we have the reactions.
Me is just fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not done a potato print. Oh, you've got it.
I figured it out. We've got some. This is not a class in how to figure out to react on Zoom, so don't worry if you can't.
Maybe I don't get it.
Yeah. It's a really fun thing to do, and I think a lot of people have probably done it um when younger, in childhood at least. And one of the reasons people do it is because it's materials that you have around that aren't too expensive. And this was exactly something that Ruth Asawa learned at Black Mountain College, is to create art from anything that's around you, whatever you find, wherever you can, anything can be used to create art. And here, you know, she was struggling for money for almost her entire career as an artist. Um, it was hard to make ends meet. And so using potatoes for printing is a great idea. It's something that she can get that's around her. And though what she does with it is, of course, different than what I did as a kid. She's really turning this into another one of those studies that we've seen, where she's playing with the intensity of the ink, doing this repetition with like more saturated to less saturated. And when you get down sort of on the left side in the bottom rows, it's really almost like a skeleton of the tree instead of the whole purple around this tree, the tree design that she's put in the potato. And so really sort of elevating an art form that is accessible into something that's, I think, really beautiful.
Yeah, I like it. It's kind of cool to think that she could carve this into the bottom of or half of a potato.
Yeah.
And does make me wonder about the Asawa family, having purplish mashed potatoes. Yeah, like oh mom, did you have to do that again? Uh, but it is like, and then I just love like all the different permutations of this potato.
Do you think that it's a watercolor? Because I've done this with watercolor. When you get the pigment really pasty, and then you just use like a sharp edge or your thumbnail or something round, you can actually, disappear the paint to make those circles and lines.
I'm not sure, but it does say it's a print. Are you saying you could do a print using watercolor instead of ink?
Yeah, I do it. I do it with my watercolors. I
Okay.
get the watercolor pigment kind of pasty and then etch into it. Yeah.
So I looked it up quickly. It says it's stamped ink on Japanese paper. So I'm not sure
But we're
what
not telling you
stamp.
not to try to do that, Catherine. Or you actually are you, Catherine, you actually do this, right? You have
Yeah.
used potatoes.
Yeah, I don't do it with a stamp or anything. I just do it with watercolors. Make white appear through the background being a solid.
Nice.
And I'm wondering, the obvious question is what kind of potato did she use, right? Is it, did you use a russet or a
It
yam.
looks like a russet to me.
Yeah. Yam would probably be hard, you know.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
comments. The subtitle looks like a curator's description. It could be self-curated. Yep. And Peter and Kevin said, I tried something like this just by using my hand.
yeah,
I guess you could do that. Yeah.
yeah.
But
It's one thing that I like about this is also it reminds us that we're all artists. We can't do what she does, but we can experiment and we can play with color and repetition, sort of, think about the same sorts of ideas, even though, it won't turn out like what Ruth does. But I think that it really kind of inspires me to want to get my hands in something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she isn't one of these artists who is like in their ivory tower.
Yeah.
She's really one of us. That's one of the reasons I think people love her so much.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So we really wanted to talk about this and think about like, well, how do you guys think this was done? That is the question we want to ask. And we're hiding the title from you, by the way. But what do you guys think? How did Ruth pull this off? This is a fish print, says Sarah and Sue. You paint on the fish, ink on a fish body print. Looks like a print, but I have no idea how it was done.
Oh,
These, Gail says, are common in Japan.
nice. You guys are right on.
This is what Shohei Ohtani does in between at bats, stuff like that.
Yeah, so exactly. She basically used a sponge to put black ink on a fish, laid the Japanese paper, so nice, thin, beautiful paper over, and then she used her hands to gently press the paper onto the fish. So it didn't roll through a press. And but I love this idea of her with a print, with the stamp, even the potato stamp, you're still a little removed from the surface. You're holding it, but the surface of the potato is what's touching the paper. But in this case, she's like being able to like put her hands between the paper and the fish. And there's just something I think really personal that comes with this. And then look at I didn't know that they were common in Japan, but I am a big fan now of this.
Well, you should go to the Berkeley Shorebird Nature Center because Sarah does these with kids that show up there.
Oh, I
Gail,
can be a big kid.
good, of course. We are, we all have our inner children, right? Gail says, my mom had some directly from Japan, and one of them I just inherited.
Oh, nice.
And here's the title. Oh, didn't we have the title? Hold on. Nope. Somehow I forgot to include the title with that one.
The title was Untitled.
Untitled Fish.
Yeah,
Sorry
in this
about
case,
that,
the
folks.
fish. But another thing I liked, Rodney, when we were talking about this one earlier, talking about the fish's mouth and how the ink comes out in such a way, it almost looks like a tongue, or like the fish had something to say.
Yeah. It's it looks pretty happy with itself.
Yeah.
Though I do have to wonder if this was also maybe dinner for the Asawa family.
Yeah. Yeah. And what type of fish? It's a bass.
All right, let's move on. We've got this leaf.
Yeah. And I think that this was very similar in how it was created to the fish. Again, this sort of hand to paper to ink to natural object. And in this case, just how the veins in this leaf really pop out, and I think that's so beautiful, and it does remind me of, you know, like doing leaf rubbings or something like that. But this is just a really beautiful leaf.
Yeah, and it's just very intricate. That's kind of, I mean, you can do a leaf rubbing, but to get
Yeah,
this level of detail is really, really impressive.
yeah,
And this is something from much later. So she's already well established as an artist by the early 1990s. I think she's already she already has works in major museums and things like that, but she's still doing these drawings.
yeah,
So she, we always think of her as like a three-dimensional, sculptor, but she also loved working in these two dimensions, although it kind of evokes three dimensions.
yeah.
And looking at chat, was the leaf done at the same time as the fish? Nope. So as I said, it's much, well, we
Sorry,
neglected
we
to
didn't.
get the year for the fish, but I'm pretty sure the fish is earlier.
Yeah,
And Gail says, I just unearthed leaf rubbings my mom had us do as kids. Ours weren't nearly as good. Let me just say, well, Ruth had her own singular way of doing things.
yeah.
Let's move on. This is really interesting. This wall of masks, which she does over decades, actually. What do we know about this, Jeanette?
Well, here, this is actually on the outside of her house in Noe Valley. So um this is where they were displayed for much of the time. But she would, oh yeah, from 66 to 2000, she would have people come over, and at gatherings, I've read that, she'd be having a party, and then she'd put like Vaseline all over someone's face and create one of these, and people at the party would all end up being shiny Vaseline. But what I love about this is not just the finished product, that here she has these art objects that she made, but this is also almost like a record of the people in her life, her friends, her family, other artists, people that she encountered that were at least close enough to her that allowed her to create these face masks. And in a lot of cases, masks like these were created, like death masks to remember a person when they've died. But these were all almost like life masks. This is tracing her life, and um, with people who are alive and part of it. And then she was able to put this up. Yeah, like some of us might put photographs on a photograph wall of the people in our lives. And so for me, I find it not just beautiful and artistic, but also a little heartwarming.
Yeah,
What
it's
do you think,
interesting. Like,
Rodney?
you'll see masks in art that can be quite kind of eerie. They do make us think of death, and these are not like, these are masks of the living, and they kind of evoke that. I mean, these people all have this very peaceful look on their faces. What if this one is this one possibly her right here?
I was thinking it might be, yeah.
So, and if that's true, well, that's her among her friends.
Yeah.
I love what Sherry says. She says, I love these masks of real faces. They all seem real and different. I'd love to see them in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, Sherry. I would love to see. I haven't heard of a major Ruth Asawa exhibition coming up, but you'd think it's high time we had one, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
If
have seen that these have been in exhibitions in the past, and I don't know, um, yeah, I don't know when we can see them in person, but yeah, and I don't know how you would do it to yourself except very carefully. Because as you see here, and as you can imagine, you need to have your eyes closed and your mouth closed. I heard she puts straws up the nostrils to keep the airways free for breathing while this is going on. But yeah, she must have really like had such a good sense of what she was doing and where she was putting everything. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. But she did do one for herself, and then she later drew the mask. So almost 2 levels of removal. So the mask is her face and an artwork. And then she drew the artwork of her face as a mask. And so, yeah,
The
incredibly
three-dimension,
creative.
three-dimension and two-dimension.
Yeah.
She's very comfortable going back. Dragona just posted, I believe we will have an Asawa exhibit at SF MoMA next year. So you can just like,
Yeah.
SF MoMA really does pay attention to what we do on Art Movie Adventures. And I think they just figured it out that they need to do this, right? Ron says Cantor Arts has these 233
Oh,
masks in their collection. So
wonderful.
maybe SF MoMA can have like a nice little conversation with the folks at Cantor down at Stanford University, and maybe we'll get to see these masks as part of that exhibition. Ruth, well, Art Viewing Adventures will do its best to advocate for that. Oh, Peter and Kevin want to know what happened to the house. The house is still there, and if you go on the City Guides Noe Valley tour, the guides do point out Ruth Asawa's house and talk a bit about her. Doesn't have the masks, of course, but it's just a house, but it's a pretty great house in San Francisco history. And then I do want to acknowledge what Gail put in chat about her making masks as kids, in also doing the straws up the nose so they could breathe in the process. It's kind of good. You don't want to lose anybody doing this, you know?
Yeah.
And she says, I believe I can say I still have some of the paste in my hair some 900 million years later. This is great. Yeah, Sherry asks, can the mask be seen from the street outside of the house? I don't believe so. I think they're now
Yeah.
in a
I
collection
mean,
center somewhere.
yeah, well, now they're in the collection, but back in the day, I don't know. I don't know if they were outside in the front where people could see them passing by or coming up, or if it was in the backyard. Yeah, I'm not sure. But what a way if you were going to your friend's house and then, they're all this collection of friends there, and maybe you're in there as well. That would be quite a way to quite a special like arrival, I think.
What about going to Ruth Asawa's house for Halloween?
Yeah.
That must have been pretty cool, right? What kind of candy? Would she be giving you potatoes, I suppose?
I don't know. I feel like she tried to spoil the people around her. I feel like she might have had some nice. She
Yeah,
might have had a party instead of giving out candy, but made everyone come in and be part of it and build a community. That was my unknowing impression of her.
maybe mochi. She'd have that or something.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let's move on. This one, okay, we are hiding the title for this one. What do you guys think she's doing with this drawing?
If you were to give it a title, what might you give it?
So Dragoness says tree. Tree rings or basket weaving, says Gail. Going down the rabbit hole. That's kind of what we're all doing these days. Can you zoom in? I don't think I can zoom in. Oh, no, I can't.
Ooh.
Of course I can zoom in. Eye of a hurricane. Yeah, kind of it's really this is called Redwood. It's from 1960. like the
Yeah.
rabbit hole visual.
I love all of the titles that you came up with. It because yes, it ends up I assume Redwood because they're like tree rings, but it's so much more than that. And I love this idea of the eye of the hurricane or the rabbit hole, that there's something drawing you into the center. And for me also, like the center of the tree, for me a redwood is being the tallest trees, being uh, alive for,
Yeah.
longer than any of us. Their history, it is like, I don't know, going down into the center of the world and life and earth, and just this is a beautiful, beautiful way of representing a tree in a different way. We're not seeing trees in quite the same direction. We're like looking down into the center of the tree in a way that I think is pretty cool.
Yeah,
What about
Ron's asking, did anybody count the rings?
Fred?
I don't know the answer to that. It does seem like quite a few. It looks like hundreds,
I
probably.
was guessing that 356
Oh,
of
right.
the title might be the number of
Ah.
rings, but I did not count.
And
It
I did
does
like
seem like
Sherry's
this might be
comment,
older. Oh,
different, but I like Sherry's comment that this could be a kippah or a yarmulke, the Jewish skull cap.
yeah, absolutely.
Shana Tova to everybody. We're getting towards the end
Okay.
of our time, so let's get through a couple more. Here's another one that we were really intrigued by.
Yeah.
This one, we held back the title on this one. So this is kind of I think it'll be a good surprise when you see what the title is, but any thoughts on what we could possibly be looking at here? A mask with eye holes. Yeah, it could really be that. Fabric. Love that thought. Owl
Ooh,
in flight. Yeah, very cool. It could
love
be the
that.
owl. This is great because it's obviously something very, very abstracted, which means we can have multiple interpretations of this. That's part of what I think makes it so engaging. Spider web as dragonfly in lower right-hand corner. Oh, look at that.
Oh, look at
I
that.
hadn't noticed that. Way to go, Gail.
Yeah,
Yeah, does everybody see the dragonfly in the corner?
yeah.
Very cool. And I had not. This is one of the great things about art is when you don't see something and then someone else sees it, and then now you can't unsee it. I'll always see that. It looks like Wire making a connection with some of her other work. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's right. That really it does really make you think of the line of her wire sculptures. And then a thought I had that's kind of totally different, but well, I'll show you the title. Headlights. Headlights. Does everyone see that? Does that like I don't think I would have ever guessed that. But
Yeah.
when you see the title, it kind of you're like, oh yeah, headlights of a car. Yeah, if you have cataracts. Yeah. I'm gonna get surgery.
But this is also her playing with the fact that the thing of the title are headlights, but how are the headlights represented? By the background being brought to the forefront. And so it's the negative space, the headlights. So it's a really interesting way of working with this. You could think about, if someone asks you draw some headlights, how would you do it? You would probably put them in context. Well, I won't say, but I would put them in context of a car or some other or draw like them with structure. But here the headlights aren't being drawn at all, really. It's
Yeah.
just the brightness it is sort of being captured. Light is sort of being captured, and not the headlight at all, or the structure of the headlight, which I think is just fascinating.
Yeah, Sarah and Sue are noting that this is use of negative space in an extremely creative way.
Yeah.
I did like what Peter and Kevin said about this could be the Earth and the Moon.
Ooh, yeah.
With LED headlights today, the background would be jet black. Right? And then Gail is asking, is this pen on paper? I think the answer is yes. It did remind me of Agnes Martin, even though very different from Agnes Martin, but 1961 is the same time when Agnes Martin is doing her wonderful minimalists with lots of, she always works in a square and she always has very, very precise things. But yeah, I would love to have gotten Ruth Asawa and Agnes Martin together and seen what the two of them would be talking about. We should keep moving. We got a couple more that we just can't end the program without showing you. So let's talk about this one called Bentwood Rocker.
Does everyone see the rocker?
And we're not thinking about Bruce Springsteen or anything like that, right? Rocker.
Yeah, it is like a mosaic. It's using all of these little black ink squares here in a way that we get this rocker coming out of it. And it's interesting also that it feels like there's some dimensionality to, like, some 3D aspect to it, and just related to how it's I think just the way the squares are in relation to each other, the shape of them, the color of them gives it this three-dimensionality in places. What do you think, Rodney?
Yeah, it's another example of how she just like is very effortlessly goes between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. You know, she's just really comfortable with that. And so it does kind of you do get this optical illusion that it is 3-dimensional. I think we have another one kind
And
of
it's like,
similar.
what is the background and what is the foreground?
Yeah.
Is there a background and a foreground when it's all squares? So she's really playing with these ideas in such an interesting way.
Yeah. And then on the on the subject of chairs, we were talking about, I guess, tables and chairs before. These, again, more really interesting things with negative space.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we should skip to that tree that we were.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of gave it away with this. Check this out, because well, it could be a tree. That's because we just said it was. But what else does it make you think of? We kind of saw a human form in all this. The
Ooh,
Hulk,
I like.
the devil. Yeah. Can you zoom in? Yeah, let's zoom in. Hold on. I think I can.
I like the Hulk and the devil.
But actually, let me get to the title. So untitled, again, untitled, but then plane tree. Does everybody know about our San Francisco plane trees? The pollarded plane trees that you find. This is on the campus of UC Berkeley. And before I moved to California, having grown up on the East Coast, I saw these in a famous movie set in San Francisco. And I didn't realize these were real things. I thought they were like props for the movie. So it is a pollarded plane tree, but they were used to great effect in the film Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is Donald Sutherland. Who, it just really blows my, like, how could this guy not win an Academy Award, right? Just an amazing, amazing film. By the way, amazing film that could really be about what's going on right now. if you want to think about it, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yes, rest in peace, Donald Sutherland, one of my favorite actors. But we're getting close to the end, and we are at 2.
Yeah.
So there's more potato prints we could talk about.
Yeah,
Um,
there's lots. I highly recommend getting, you can get it from the library, Through Lines, the exhibition catalog for this work. There's just so much more to Ruth Asawa than I knew before we started preparing for this talk and saw that exhibition at the Whitney. It's really exciting. I like the way she's playing with things, as we mentioned, you know, figure and background, how she's playing with colors, the color theory, how she's playing with balancing negative space and positive space, and all of the different things that it's a shame she's it's wonderful she's known for her sculptures, but it's a shame she's only known for that, because there's so much more to her. And I am really happy that we had a chance to share with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. It's always fun talking art with you. And of course, we both love Ruth Asawa. So kind of a Ruth Asawa love fest we had today. That was great. Jeanette will be back soon to talk about the Banff show that was originally scheduled. But Nikki, let's turn it back to you. What's coming up next from the Community Living Campaign?
Hi, tonight we've got Boomer Music cover art. And the next time we're all together, it's going to be a Jack London program on, I believe it's October 26th.
With Avril and Javine.
Yeah.
They're one of our favorite guests.
Okay, there's a few things in the chat. So thank you, everybody. Don't forget to vote.
Yep.
Vote.
Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. We
Happy
are
Indigenous
on
Peoples
the
Day.
unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone and the Ramaytush Wechin, and we should always recognize their sacrifice and talk about their history. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. And we're still celebrating Latino Heritage Month.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Have a good week.
All right.
Bye.
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 All right. See you guys.